So yeah, bye bye. Let's get into this. So yeah, I'm not really a thing. I talk about more in the spoiler section and season 2, which I have watched and I will put for its own thing. I have watched, but I do find it interesting. There are other stuff which I think are better in my opinion. I do still like the concept of the swords being like, oh, everyone has like a curse, which is interesting. And definitely the whole seemingly battle through music. I think it's a good spin. It's like, there's a whole thing of everyone talking about the thing between battles and songs, which I think is really interesting. And this is something else that adds to this fun, unique way of like, because like the way you dance is like there's some steps, and the way that you fight also works in those steps. So I do find that fun. So yeah, let's get to spoilers. The one thing which I think is interesting is there's a connection between the sort of like main sort of like fighter, which is the protagonist, and a sort of like person, and during the end they sort of ruin the friendship. And it's all because of this sort of like questioning position. It shows up more in season 2, but it shows this questioning. It is interesting, like, oh, how does the world work? Why does it work? But because at this point, I'm not, I know it's a bit dark, it's like, I'm not really interested, I don't know, I'm not, like, if there's a world where it's like, okay, why does this work? Why is this happening? Why is all of this thing? Like, there's a whole thing about a good and a bad side. I'm talking about that more because I have a theory about that, which talks about it more in season 2, more specifically the ending singers. But overall, obviously it's wrong, it's completely incorrect. But it's interesting. But overall, I'm not really a fan. I like it, I think it's good. But overall, I don't think... So yeah, it is interesting, and some of the stuff later on with the idea of how it works is interesting, but overall, there's even a whole thing about like, the only human, but... Because when it first started, I thought it was really going to be interesting, like, going from place to place, seeing different people, and seeing like, oh, how do the curses work? But the curses are elaborated a bit, but I thought it was going to be like, oh, this means that this person has to fight this way, or this person, or it's going to be like something that someone fights. And when it turns to orchestra, I do like it. I don't know much about music, and when they're like, so you fight in like several lines doing this, it's like, it's fun, but you have this whole cast thing. I thought it was going to be like each person fights differently, which isn't a thing. Which might be me thinking it up and like really building that idea in my head, and then not doing that and then being a bit disappointed. Maybe it's a me thing, maybe I'm mistreating this, and maybe there's some stuff in it that makes this really fun, but yeah. So yeah. Moriarty and the plan's about to end. Well, obviously there's more to the book, but the big plan. So yeah, I hope you enjoy, and good night. So, this isn't going to be long, but yeah, let's talk. So, I didn't like season 1, and season 2 I don't think is much better. Also the fact that technically episode 1 is after this episode, which is confusing, or I downloaded it incorrectly, which is realistically what could happen. But overall, I didn't thought this was a good idea. The one thing which I don't like, because they had this whole thing of like, oh, these mermaids have like 2 forms and they don't use it. They use it once in like season 1 of like showing her original form, and then another time before it disappears forever. But I do think it would be interesting to be like use that as like, oh, you have two forms, you have to use two things that could fight slightly differently. I did think of a fun idea of like someone else thought about this thing of like fates and like, oh, good and bad thing, and I thought about something else being like doing a Jekyll and Hyde like ages ago. But I've always wanted to do an idea where like you have a D&D character, but you have two forms. I'm not going to do what specifically they do, which is more specifically male and female, but have two forms to have like that have different stats. Sort of. I don't know how that would work. I need to see if anyone could figure it out. That's besides the point. That's not what this thing is about. But that wasn't used. Yay. So yeah. I am also going to acknowledge that this section will be a bit longer because there's because the one thing I do like is two things. One, in season 1 they do sort of a band thing, and this, when they talk a lot about the dark, light and light mode, and definitely when you have during the end the cards being like strength, there's a couple I didn't recognize. Like I think magician wasn't the number it should have been. It says 2. I don't think it's 2. I think because fool is 0, so that's not 1. So magician is 1. I think like, but it's the whole thing about the good side of town and the bad side of the town, good and bad tarots. For the longest time, I was like, is that the thing? It's not. It's to do with a theme park and the theme park characters coming to life, which I think is a fun idea. Like the idea that like you have one real person, you have a bunch of these animatronics doing these actions like da 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 da, and then they became real. I find fun. You also have the main sort of like guy with like 2 voices die and have his whole thing. But overall, I'll leave that to this. So yeah, I didn't really like it. It wasn't really a thing that I liked. It was very complicated and very odd in that sort of way. I don't know, it wasn't really a thing that I thought was interesting. Again, I think this is mostly I didn't came in this with the right energy. Because when I saw the first thing being like, oh, every person has a curse, I thought it'd be like, and I really badly want this, being like, it's like everyone has a curse, being like, everyone fights slightly different. And when you see the thing being like a sword without sharpness, I thought it would be like, oh yes, I have like a hammer, but I can't use the hammer part, and I have to use like a hammer as like a bar thing. You know what I mean. But I thought it was going to be like that, but it wasn't. There was probably a deeper meaning to this. I just really got excited with people fighting in unusual days, definitely with the sword being not sharp. And I thought it would be like everyone, but no, everyone had swords. Which I like. Fancy swords are really good. But yeah. From an anime I didn't really like to an anime I kind of did like. This is going to be fun, but yeah, I hope you enjoy, and good night.